contribution of Mandel. So we will discuss Mendel's work. Gregor John Mendel, he was basically a monk in Austria. He was a very enthusiastic scientist also. What he did, he took a specific plant, garden pea, for his experiment just to see that how the variations occurred in garden pea. Gregor John Mendel is known as father of genetics. He did his work very dedicatedly, honestly, and his work is concluded in the form of laws derived out of experiment conducted on garden pea. Mendels Law were rather rediscovered by three different scientists, because at that time science was not that developed. So three scientists independently discovered the Mendels Law. They were Hugo de Vries, Karl Correns, and Sharmak. After 30 years of the death of Mendel, these laws are still considered as a basis of genetics. There were certain reasons why Mendel selected the pea plant for his experiment. Now this pea plant is not an ordinary pea plant. This is the pea which is known as garden pea. Its botanical name is Pisum sativum. It is an annual plant which can be grown in a very small area. It has got flowers which has got both male and female sex organs. At the same time, this is a plant which can be grown without any difficulty. Small size plant, not a big tree. Likewise, there were many reasons why Mendel selected the pea plant. There were certain reasons why Mendel was successful in his experiment, and one of the basic reasons was the selection of pea plant for his experimental work, because of the above mentioned reasons. Now let us see some of the basic definitions before we proceed ahead regarding genetics. These terms are very frequently used in genetics, and a student of genetics must know it before he or she starts studying genetics. One of the basic terms is trait. What is trait? Trait is nothing but a simple character, or the characters which appear in any generation. If characters appear in F1 generation, then the traits are known as dominant traits. If the characters are not expressed in F1 generation, then the characters are known as recessive traits. So a student of genetics must be familiar with these two terms, dominant as well as recessive traits which are expressed in F1 generation, they are dominant, and which are not expressed, they are recessive traits. The next term which we will discuss apart from this dominant and recessive trait is the cross. Cross is simply mating between male and female. If the cross is between F1 hybrid with any of the parent, whether it is dominant or recessive or hybrid, whatever may be, then the cross is known as back cross. But if the cross between F1 hybrid and exclusively recessive parent, then the cross is known as test cross. These two crosses have got great biological significance as they are used to determine the genotype and phenotype of the next generation organisms. So these are again two terms, test cross and back cross. Coming to the next term, which is frequently used in study of genetics, that is monohybrid and dihybrid cross. Monohybrid cross means study of inheritance of one character at a time. If we study two characters at a time, then the cross is known as dihybrid cross. Two characters at a time. Mendel conducted not only monohybrid, dihybrid but trihybrid cross also during his experiments when he was busy with his experiments. Coming to another terminology, that is genotype. It simply means the genetic composition of the organism. Genetic composition of organism. That is known as genotype. For example, if you see Mendel's experiment, this is how the dominant genotype is mentioned, this is how the hybrid genotype is mentioned, and this is how the recessive genotype is mentioned. Genotype give rise to the phenotype. Now, what is phenotype? Phenotype is the physical appearance of the organism. If we see depth, then it is not only appearance, it is also internal anatomical characters as well as physiological characters, biochemical characters and all. These characters are determined by genes which are made up of DNA. Again I am repeating. Genes are made up of DNA. Coming to the next term related to genes is alleles, very important term. Each gene is present in two forms and they are known as allelomorphic forms. Just I'll discuss here the experiment conducted by Mandel. These are the two allelic genes, both are dominant. These are again two allelic genes, and these are also two allelic genes. Means each gene is present in two alternative form. One may be dominant, another may be recessive, or both may be dominant or both may be recessive. If both are dominant or recessive, then this condition is known as homozygous. If one allele is dominant and another is recessive, this is dominant and this is recessive, then we will write is heterozygous. So these things must be clear to you, homozygous and heterozygous traits. Homozygous gene will produce only one type of gamete. That is only T. Similarly, this one will produce only one type of gamete, that is only T. But the hybrid one will produce two types of gamete. One may be this and another may be this. These are certain terms which I have discussed with you regarding genetics. Mendel's experiment was very perfect. He was successful because he kept all the data on record.